I find it very hard to believe that you could have one inspiration or motivation point that keeps you going for life purely because of the law of familiarity. We forget.
Social media can be inspiring and motivating, but you can't think it's real. If you think it's real, you're going to compare your life to it. I can't compare to Brad Pitt and Troy when even Brad Pitt isn't Brad Pitt and Troy.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, episode number 1447, One Trait That Sabotages Relationships. Today, for episode number 1448, if you're waiting for motivation and inspiration, listen to this. I did an episode very similar to this on Podcast Growth U last week. And the reason I did that episode is because I've heard many people say, yeah, I took the week off because I wasn't motivated. Or I took a few episodes off because I just wasn't feeling inspired. And if I've learned anything over this journey, whether it's fitness, podcasting, being on podcasts, coaching, business in general, one of the things I have learned and I've tried to practice is you're most likely not going to find motivation and inspiration until you start taking action. I think for many of us, even if you hear the word motivation, what is that actually? It's a motive for action, so a reason for action. I understand the definition, but I don't know. I think most people end up finding motivation and inspiration once they start finding a little bit of momentum. I remember, Alan, when I used to live in Uxbridge back in the day, I had this obsession with movies. For a long time, I would go on eBay every single week after I got my paycheck from the gas station. And I would buy DVDs. I'd get like 5 or 10 every week and get them shipped out before the days of Amazon. And I remember one of my favorite movies was Never Back Down. It's a movie about a mixed martial arts fighter who fights the popular guy at school, wins, and then dates the beautiful girl at school. One of those type stories.
Makes sense why you liked it.
Yes, yeah. The opposite of what my high school career seemed like. But I love the mixed martial arts part. I was a big mixed martial arts fan. I was watching UFC at that point, I believe. And I remember I would have days, this is one of my things, I would get Chinese food from Foodworks. You know where Foodworks is. Mm-hmm. And I would watch Never Back Down. And there were times where I literally would say, you know what? I'm done eating this Chinese food. I got to go to the gym. This movie is inspiring me. It's motivating me. But I was still watching the movie. It's not like I was sitting there saying, I really hope I start to feel inspired. I really hope I start to feel motivated. I was watching the movie for a completely different reason. I had Chinese food in front of me. I had my orange chicken, I had my pork fried rice, and I probably had my crab rangoons and my egg rolls. And I wanted to eat Chinese food and watch this movie. But I was so inspired, motivated by the movie and the fight scenes and the training scenes that it got me going. In Podcast Growth U, I said this. I said, one of the reasons I don't think I've been rapping as much is because I haven't been as inspired or motivated to rap. And I said, do you think if I scheduled every single week, if I had 2 hours on Saturday scheduled to rap, I'd rap more? Even if I wasn't inspired or motivated? I'm sure, because once I sat down and started doing it, I might find a beat that makes me feel some type of way. I might get into a flow. I might be going through something. But since I don't have the time set aside, it's most likely not going to happen. I'm most likely not just going to find inspiration out of nowhere or sit down and write something. I watched, I didn't say this on this podcast. It's hard when I have recorded in this exact situation what I'm about to say. It's just not for the show. In the documentary I told you about, Louis Capaldi, the musician. Did I talk about that on here? Okay. He was recording his second studio album. And he said the same thing. He's like, I don't know what to write. I feel like I'm a terrible writer. I don't know what to do. But he kept going to the studio every day. That was his process. He goes to the studio, he listens to music, he tries to write stuff, and he sees what happens. Mm-hmm. So that really is my thought for this episode. Is there a place for motivation and inspiration? Absolutely. 100%. I think it's probably further along momentum than we give credit for. And even that example of me not rapping as much because I don't feel inspired, when I sit down and I do it, I usually get inspired and motivated. The fact is, I just haven't created the space to do that often enough. And that right there is the action. Maybe the action for you for motivation and inspiration is to set the time, to clear the space, whatever it may be. I would just argue that there's probably some sort of action that would benefit us all for motivation and inspiration.
I actually think it's really empowering to realize how little inspiration and motivation are sustainable. I think we've all had those moments that Kevin's talking about where we're watching a movie or listening to a song, or we see something on social media that pumps us up so much that we're like, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go to the gym. I've done that countless times. Some motivational video or something on YouTube, and it's like, that's it. Let's go. Let's rock. And I used to say as a fitness coach that you need to have a gym that's within 15 minutes from you for those reasons. And ideally, it would be a 24/7 gym. Because when the mood strikes, if there's uncertainty whether or not the gym is open, it's going to affect you long term. But I actually think it's empowering to understand that motivation and inspiration can help, but it's not a solution. It's not a sustainable solution. It's not going to make you consistent. And Kevin and I try to talk about this. We're actually going to do another episode similar to this concept later this week, but it's going to be a different framework. But this idea that you're going to want to do hard things, it's empowering, I think, to realize that that's not real. I don't care if Kevin loves podcasting. He doesn't always want to podcast. He might want to podcast more than me. He might want to podcast more than you. But there are times when he does not want to podcast. Now what? Does he go watch an inspiring movie? No. That's where self-discipline comes. So I think inspiration and motivation can be a great start. But I think that self-discipline never fails. Self-discipline is required. And there was this great quote that I heard many, many years ago, but I don't always go back to the main fundamentals, and I should more. But it's this idea that you don't feel your way into action, you act your way into feeling. The other day, the last thing I wanted to do was do mobility. And the second last thing I wanted to do was listen to our episode where I had terrible audio quality. All right, so to bring the listeners behind the scenes, because that's what we do at NLU, we pull back the curtain, particularly on our own mistakes. My Windows 11 computer was creating a popping noise in the older episodes. Probably 2 months ago, if you were to look back 60 episodes, you'd hear a popping in my audio. We solved that problem by getting me a ZenBook, which is Windows 10, and we got me a new mixer. And the new mixer I use for both coaching calls and podcasts. And in coaching calls, I use a lapel mic. If you were to listen to last week's episodes, you would hear that the audio quality is worse than the audio quality on this episode.
Hopefully. And the reason why is because my lapel mic on my old mixer, I could turn it down all the way and it would be off. On this new mixer, I turn it down all the way and you could still hear from the lapel mic. And my lapel mic was right next to the fan on my computer. So the audio quality from my side was not good for the last month or so. And so the last two things on planet Earth that I wanted to do, obviously that's an exaggeration, okay? But I did not want to do mobility, and I definitely didn't want to listen to our show because of the audio quality frustrating me so much. Now, the production team put it through a filter. It's still more than good enough, and but for my standards, it's very difficult for me.
And then on top of that, there's all the feedback of what I should have said, could have said, wanted to say. You know, listening to your own content is very challenging for anyone who has really high standards for themselves. And so I'm sitting there and I don't feel like it at all. I'm not motivated. I'm not inspired. I'm in the gym. And I'm like, the last thing I want to do is sit on this yoga mat in this gym and do my mobility and listen to NLU. Because it's too much feedback. I'm exhausted. It's 8 o'clock at night. And I just don't want to do it. Now, here's the interesting part of the story. I ended up doing it. I grinded it out. And it was like a 30-minute episode too. So 30 minutes of mobility. Me in the corner of this gym. And then I worked out for 45 minutes straight, set a timer. When I got home, you'd have thought that I had conquered the world. Emilia was like, you are in such a good mood. I was in such a good mood because I finally did what I wanted to do, but didn't want to do. And that's the irony. I want to work out. I want to do mobility. I want to review our show. I want to be a better speaker. I want XYZ. But I don't always do it. And I cannot stand it when I don't. Those broken promises you make to yourself every single day, they add up and you just don't want to go. You just don't want to do it. But afterwards, you feel like $1,000,000. You're inspired. You're motivated. You're happy. You're fulfilled. You're like over the moon. I was singing and dancing. It was awesome. That's the way it works. I don't know why it's set up that way. I do from a neuroscientific standpoint, but at the end of the day, you're going to feel good after, not during, definitely not before. We're going to feel good after we record these episodes.
I'm excited. I was thinking of Chinese food. I Jeff myself now. I'm thinking of Chinese food.
Oh, you're in trouble. He's inspired and motivated for Chinese food. Inspiration and motivation work for easy stuff. Self-discipline works for the hard stuff.
Last week, you and I were recording, and you said, hey, can you stay late tonight to record? And I said, I can't. I gave Taryn my word I was going to do something. That's something I've learned from Suits as well. Another shout out to Suits. They give each other their word often, and your word is your bond. So I cleaned the coffee maker. I haven't been using the espresso, whatever it is, espresso maker that Taryn got me for Christmas, because I've only been having my pre-workout in the morning, and then that's it. I don't have any more caffeine because it was affecting my sleep. It was a whole thing. But Taryn said, hey, can you clean it for me so I can use it? And when we're in Belgium, somebody's going to come watch the cats, and they know how to use it, so we want them to be able to use it too if they want coffee. And I didn't want to do it at all. But I knew the only way that I was going to do that is if I said, yeah, I'll give you... I said, I'm not going to do it tonight. I can't do it tonight. Tonight's going to be a later night. I want to relax. I said, what if I give you my word, I'll do it tomorrow? And she said, yeah, that's okay. I can wait another day. Again, I wasn't motivated or inspired to do it, but I did create something that would create a motive for action, a reason for doing. A reason for doing is necessity. There was necessity. So I put on some music and I went to town and I cleaned the coffee maker. Pain in the butt. Wasn't ideal. The week before that, so if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen the setup. We have the coffee maker, and then we have all these different syrups, and it's a really nice coffee making station. But in one of the drawers, we have flavored syrups, and one of them spilled all, like the dark chocolate just spilled all over the inside of this shelf. And Taryn saw it. She's like, hey, are you going to clean that? First of all, she said, did you see it? Is this the first time you've seen it? And I said, no, definitely not. I saw it last night. And she said, why didn't you clean it last night? And I said, I figured another day wouldn't hurt, honestly. And I thought it was dry, so I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And honestly, I knew it was going to be a giant pain in the ass. And she's like, okay. So I said, I promise you I'll clean it tomorrow. I'll give you my word. I'll clean it tomorrow. It was terrible. It sucked. It took me like an hour to clean out this thing. I had to clean all the stuff. Again, I understand these are first world problems, all things considered, but I wasn't motivated. I wasn't inspired. That might be the next level nugget is, what could you create that would create motivation? Some level of necessity, some level of promise to yourself or somebody else. I know we use that often. We use the commitment device, but that's one of the best things in the world. Mm-hmm. I promise I'm going to do this for Alan. I'll most likely do it. Good.
The skin in the game thing.
We're actually doing an episode on that, so don't go too deep.
Okay. You gave Taryn your word. Your word means more to you. Keeping your word means more to you than the pain in the ass of cleaning out that drawer.
Definitely.
I wanted to share this briefly. I have this in front of me. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. It's called a productivity planner. And I made the massive mistake 8 years ago of buying a bunch of these. It wasn't a mistake. It was actually amazing, but it was wildly painful. And the reason it's painful is because it's broken down to help you become productive. And the promise was you will be at least 200% more productive. And by the way, I was way more than 200% more productive. And this is not a sales pitch for this productivity planner. This is not our planner. I don't even know if they sell these anymore. But here's what it has you do. It has you write down the date. There's a little inspiring quote in the top, inspiration, motivation. It says, so I'll just go to some random page. On page 46. The date is blank. I didn't use this one fully, aka wasted my money. Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I'll understand. Chinese proverb. So motivational quote. Awesome. Okay, great. Very cool. Kevin's like, yeah, nice, awesome. That. But that's not going to get you to clean that goddamn drawer. So most important task of the day. If this was the only thing I did today, I would be satisfied. And then there's a blank. It says number 1 next to it. And then it has a checkbox, whether or not you got it done. And it does these 25-minute increments. Okay. Well, I had this idea of self 8 years ago. And the idea of self was I am a self-disciplined person. And honestly, I think statistically speaking, I was, but not in certain things. Back then, I had a YouTube channel called Real Life Superheroes, and it was this series that I was trying to record. And if you've never started a YouTube channel, it's just massive uncertainty. You're putting yourself out there. You don't know if your audio is going to be good. You've never video edited, and if you have, you're not good at it. You know, you have cameras and you have lights and you don't know how to put them together, and it's just awful. Everything about it is just terrible. That's why NLPS is so powerful, because we'll just do all that for you if you start a podcast, not necessarily a YouTube channel. But it's just terrible. It's just so bad. Starting a YouTube channel is bad, really bad. And so I had the lights, and I had the whiteboard, and I had my notebook, and I had what I was going to say, and I had my lapel mic, and I had my director friend come and help me through all this equipment. And, you know, I had this nice camera that I spent a lot of money on and all that stuff. And it was just brutal. It was awful. And I remember how hard it was for me to edit it and to post it and to write the show notes. In this case, it's not show notes, it was YouTube notes. And I just remember how hard it was for me to face the fact that I was so undisciplined. I'm holding up the productivity planner. I have a really bad experience with these. The reason why is because I couldn't do 3 things a day. Now, I could do 3 things that are already habits a day. I could brush my teeth. I could record a podcast episode. I could do mobility, whatever it is. If they're already habits, mobility is probably a bad example of that. But you got to remember, Kevin and I have done 1,448 episodes prior to this. It's not hard for us to jump on the mics. But in the beginning, it was just a whole day endeavor. It took all day to muster the setup, and, you know, it was just awful. And I think that's empowering. I'm not trying to say don't start a podcast. I'm not trying to say don't start a YouTube channel. What I'm saying is the beginning, it takes so much more than being inspired and motivated. If you are waiting on inspiration, you're waiting on motivation to do that ridiculously hard thing, you're never going to do it. You just have to bite the bullet and eat the mud or the junk or the frog or the shit, whatever it is that you want to eat. But at the end of the day, that first video on YouTube was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And here I am now, and we do videos every day, YouTube. And it's a habit now. Every Monday we record, Marathon Monday, for years now. If we make it look easy, do not get it twisted. The beginning was absolutely brutal. And I had to face the cold, hard truth that I am not as disciplined as I thought. And if you can face that, and you can love quotes and Chinese, proverbs and inspirational stuff on Instagram, that's great. But I'm telling you, when it comes to building something real and starting something real, it takes so much more. than motivation and inspiration.
And it still is brutal.
Hi, my name is Tim Melanson, and I have a web development agency called Creative Crew Agency, and I'm also a podcast host of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. I met Alan a little over a year ago. He was a guest on my podcast, and we had an epic conversation, and I was just really impressed with his work ethic. And so I decided to jump on board with him, and it's been a little over a year now. My business has grown, but more importantly, I feel much less stressed and much more purposeful with what I'm doing and the direction that I'm going. So I definitely highly recommend Alan. If you're looking for some accountability, if you're looking for some tools, then look him up, take him up on his consultation.
Transparently, it's brutal. It's just brutal in different ways. I love podcasting. I love each and every one of you listening, but I'd rather be sleeping right now for sure. I'm not really inspired or motivated at the beginning of the day. But somebody asked me on a podcast, they said, how did you say inspired and motivated the whole time? We didn't. That's not real.
We didn't. Yeah.
I know that I could probably give a really good, powerful, inspirational, motivational answer to that. Of every day, I woke up, and the second my feet hit the floor, I understood how lucky I was to be alive. That just hasn't been my experience. That hasn't been my experience.
Do you think that's a little bit of BS?
No, I'm sure there's people who hold that. I'm sure there's people who hold that. I'm just trying to live more and more in the truth of, I would hate to give advice to someone. One of the things I say is remember your why. If you need inspiration and motivation and you're struggling, remember your why. Why did you start this in the first place? Because if maybe you've lost sight of that, that's possible. Put yourself under a little extra pressure.
I think it is possible to have your feet hit the floor and feel grateful for your life like fairly consistently. Definitely not every day. I think that the people who say that that's every day are full of it. I genuinely do.
Maybe. I don't know.
There's no way that you're going to wake up every day and your feet hit the floor and you're going to crush it. There's no way. I've coached a lot of people, Kev. I think it's motivational, it's inspirational. And I think that in a motivational, inspirational video, it can be useful.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the way people actually live, I have one close friend of mine who has a very, very successful, inspirational, motivational YouTube channel. And he doesn't wake up every day inspired. Hell no. No way. I coached him. No way. As a matter of fact, he struggles just as much as you do to get shit done. It's just not really motivational and inspirational to do that. So I think those videos can be dangerous. Here's what I would say. It's not the whole spectrum.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean some people aren't more grateful than others. It doesn't mean that you can't wake up grateful for your life. I just want it to be as clear as possible. I've never met someone who doesn't struggle with this self-discipline thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Different strokes for different folks. But I always just try to keep it as real as I can and just say, look, I can't tell you how to stay motivated and inspired all the time. I don't know. I don't know what the formula is. We do it, or we're very consistent. I will not say I'm more motivated or inspired than your average person. I will say I'm committed and more consistent. But I don't know if that's a product of motivation and inspiration. A lot of it's necessity. A lot of it is I don't want to miss because we haven't missed since we said we weren't going to miss. That's a big part of it. That's a big piece of it. So what would you say to younger Kev? I know we got to jump, but what would you say to 6 years ago Kev at the beginning when we used to listen to all this motivational stuff? And we've really, NLU isn't that. No. We're not like, remember we used to do Motivation Monday, and I think we have motivation and inspiration in the show, but it's not really that. We're a different vibration, for lack of better phrasing. What would you say to Kevin back then that used to listen to some of that stuff? Oh man, I would probably just say, let's see if this can be motivational and inspirational. It's going to be my goal. I put a lot of pressure on myself. The determining factor for how successful you are 6 years from today is not going to be how inspired and motivated you were regularly, it would be how often you were disciplined when you were not, is probably what I would say.
Well said.
Clip it. Right, that right
Well
there is
said.
a teaser clip.
That's really good. It doesn't.
But
Motivation
that's my
and inspiration are part of the equation.
Yeah.
But it's not the whole equation.
You
And
can't
I think that's what
rely
I was
on
really
it.
trying to. Yeah, you can't rely on it.
You
really
can't rely on it because it's almost like relying on luck. Here's the thing, and it's very hard to make this land, but it's almost like, I'll say, you and I have said this before, like fitness kind of sucks. Doing everything it required to get in really good shape and stay in shape and all that, it kind of sucks. And there'll be people who say like, no, it's awesome. I love all that. Maybe you do. I don't love all that it takes. And the odds of somebody loving hard exercise, tracking calories, weighing themselves, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, taking the right micronutrients, supplements, all of that stuff, I just feel like the odds are super rare that somebody would love all those things. Are there people out there that do? Yes. I'm willing to bet there are. Just like I like getting punched in the face. That's a rare thing, probably. It doesn't really bother me that much as compared to other people. But it's almost that thought of, unless you're only doing things that you're motivated to do and inspired to do, but I don't know what that would be for somebody forever. I don't know what it possibly. I'm not always motivated or inspired to have deep, challenging conversations with Taryn. I don't always want to do that, but I know it'll be worth it, and I know it's what's best. That's more of a discipline thing or a courage thing. So I always think from that frame of, maybe you're blessed to the point where you love every single thing that's required to get in really good shape. Maybe you are. I don't know. I'm sure there's people out there that are more motivated by that and they love that stuff more than I do. I don't know. But I find it very hard to believe that you could have one inspiration or motivation point that keeps you going for life purely because of the law of familiarity. We forget. Have you I mean, you haven't yet, but my back is good now. I've kind of forgotten about it.
Oh, I know.
I'm lifting heavy.
My back is pretty good. I'm already losing some of my humility around it. I said to Emilia earlier, she's like, how's your back? I said, oh, really good. But I don't want to lose my humility.
Yeah.
I want to keep my humility along the way. And I think that's another episode, but we're going to talk about
It's challenging. This is a challenging thing. Again, you want to watch motivational, inspirational videos, I'm all for it. Alan loves inspirational movies. He watches them on the reg.
Yep.
Listens to motivational stuff every morning. So it's not that. It's more of if that's not working, it's not it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the content you're consuming. Last thing, there was somebody in Alan and I's life one time where we had somebody at we did a live podcast. And this person did a presentation. And it was very motivational and inspirational. And this person that we know, she said, I am going to run. I'm going to start running. And I'm going to start exercising every single day. I'm so motivated. I'm so inspired. I think that lasted a couple days. And then it petered off. The reason is because motivation and inspiration are fleeting. Just like happiness is. You're not always going to be happy. It's not, I don't know if it's humanly possible.
It's not even biochemically good for you. You need to have, there's been a lot of science underneath, you need to have oscillation. You can't just be up all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's highs and lows, there's ebbs and flows. It's not like you can, even uppers and drugs, you can't just take uppers. Otherwise, you'll have to have crashes. They talk about that. Like people who do a lot of drugs, there's these really big crashes. And you have to modulate and oscillate. So I don't want people looking on social media at the inspiration and motivation and thinking that that's the whole picture.
Yeah.
I listen to inspirational. I have one video called Ode to Excellence that I've listened to every day for 8 years. Every single day. And it's so motivational. And it's so inspiring. And it's about discipline. But that's not going to do it. That's not it. That's one part of the equation. That has helped.
It also requires motivation and inspiration for you to do that every morning.
Yeah, discipline. It takes discipline. I don't want to listen to it every morning. No way.
So it's almost like in order to do the thing that creates the motivation and inspiration, you have to have discipline to do it in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or something.
Yeah.
That's why I started with, I was watching a movie and I got inspired. I didn't plan on it.
Yeah.
But the action of me picking that, if I was watching whatever the hell else I would have been watching, Friday the 13th, I probably wouldn't have been inspired to go work out. I probably would have been inspired to hide under the covers. Understandable.
Last thing, I promise.
Yeah.
Okay. This is it. I love inspiring movies. I love it. I went and saw Jurassic Park 3D, 30th anniversary on Friday with Emilia. Date night. It was the best. Okay. And I do consider that inspiration. I really do. Okay. Superhero movies, better example. Iron Man or Captain America, super inspiring. But remember, I have to remember their movies. I want that to land. I can be inspired by Captain America and Iron Man all day. But I have to remember their fictional characters and their fictional movies. I can be inspired by a movie, but I can't think the movie's real. Do you see what I mean? That I think that social media can be inspiring and motivating, but you can't think it's real. If you think it's real, you're going to compare your life to it. I can't compare to Brad Pitt and Troy when even Brad Pitt isn't Brad Pitt and Troy. It's a green screen and it's not real, you know? And it's very dangerous to compare to things that aren't real. They're not attainable because they're not real. And I just hope that lands in a new way, because movies can inspire you and motivate you all day, but you can't believe that you're going to feel that way all the time. Even the actor didn't want to do that scene.
I could be an actor.
Of course. Maybe one day you will.
You think?
Who's going to play you in the movie?
Me.
Perfect.
Older me.
They're going to need some serious makeup, man.
I think Brad Pitt could.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd do full justice, but I don't know. Brad Pitt. I don't know. I don't know who I look like. Who do I look like? We'll save that for another day.
I think that's probably not important.
Tom Cruise could play you, because he's never going to get any older, ever.
yeah.
I think
Well,
he's
he's
I think he's a real person.
just inspiration and motivation only. No, he talks about it. He talks about how he loves movies, but
well, I'll reach out to him to see if he'll play you.
Sounds good, man.
I'll let you know. Next Level Nation, if you don't follow us on social media and you want to send me who would play me in a movie, my handle is @NeverQuitKid. Please be nice. If you do, send people over. Alan's is @ALazarus88, ALAZAROS88, and then Alan Lazarus, Kevin Palmieri on Facebook. If you want to connect on social media, please. We post every day. We're on our stories every day, and we don't always batch our DMs every day, but if you reach out and say, hey, I listen to NLU and The Rock should play you, Kev, you will forever be my favorite. For sure.
Well, he's not as jacked as you are, so
that is fair. And honestly,
he's going to have to really start working out.
He could start working out a little harder now if you wanted.
Yeah, if you want a little bit harder now. If you resonated with the productivity planner thing that I talked about earlier, every single person, I believe, is either more disciplined than they thought or less disciplined than they thought. For me, I was far less disciplined than I thought. You might be on the other end of that. We have an app called Optimal that will help you track habits. And it's either going to be easier than you thought or harder than you thought, depending on your self-concept. Either way, it's going to help you build real self-discipline. So maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised and go, okay, 3 habits, I'm crushing it. Awesome. Killing it. Let's bump to 6. Maybe you're struggling with 3 and you just have to work through that and start realizing, you know what, maybe I have lost some of my humility. And maybe this is the humble pie that I need to transform my life. And we're going to talk about that in another episode. So Optimal, click the link in the show notes. No matter what, it's going to be good for you. It's either going to make you believe in yourself more or it's going to give you the humble pie you need. Give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Tomorrow for episode number 1000. Hold on. I've Jeff the whole thing. I was way too far down. 1,449. 3 things required for transformation. Alan has coached how many hours? 3,000 hours?
I surpassed 4,500 recently.
4,500
I believe it's
hours.
almost 4,600. Yeah.
That's a long bit of hours. You've
coached a lot of coaching.
He's coached many people, and he came to me one day and he said, Kev, 3 things that matter. 3 things that are required for transformation.
I had no idea. Early in my coaching, I had no idea these were required.
Well,
now
don't say
in
'em.
hindsight, I won't.
Don't you
I won't.
dare say them.
I was blown away by this, and it's changed the way that I view myself, and it's changed the way I view people.
So if you want to find out, tune in tomorrow for episode number 1449. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. If anybody knows The Rock, please let me know so we can connect with him. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.
Stay motivated and inspired, and most importantly, disciplined. Next Level Nation.